When animating in Toon Boom, one of the things you have to be aware of is exactly where your pivot points are. Now, what a pivot point is, if I come down here and I select my transform tool and I click, let's say, on the nose, this little dot here is the pivot point. If I decide to select the eyebrows, the dot seems about in the same place. That's because the default pivot point for everything you draw is dead center. Now, what is a pivot point? Imagine if this little dot here, our pivot point, is a thumbtack in a large sheet of paper. So it's where everything is going to pivot or rotate from. So if I decide to rotate the eyebrows, they're going to rotate from this one little dot right here. So I'm going to do Command Z to undo that move. Now, in order to change my pivot point, I'm going to select our little drawing pivot here. And you'll see a little crosshair, and I can click exactly where I want that to be. So for the eyebrows, I want it to be about dead center. Now I can do this for each layer. I'm going to go ahead and select the head layer. And instead of being dead center, I'll probably want that to be closer to the neck. Now for the mouth, I probably want that to either be closer to the chin area or possibly right at the upper lip area. And the main reason is if I decide to click on transform, that's going to work really well, especially when you use drawing substitutions and change out the mouth shapes. Now the nose, I'll simply come here, select my pivot point, and I'm going to set that about right center between these two openings. Now, for the eyes, this is going to be very important. Each time we set the pivot point, we have several different drawing substitutions for the eyes. So I can do one of two things. I can set the pivot point here, but that's just going to be on the very first drawing. So if I go now to the second drawing, the pivot point is in a different place. Now I can do several things. I can go back to the first drawing and copy that pivot point. And since I'm right in the camera view, I can do Command C and then go into the second drawing and do Command V. And that will paste that pivot point exactly where it should be. Now, another way of actually doing that, I'm going to undo that. Let's do Command Z. And we'll go to the very first drawing and undo that as well. Another way of making sure that you can adjust the pivot point for all of your drawing substitutions is simply to go to your advanced animation tools. Now mine are set right here at the top. And if you do not see your advanced animation tools, come down to Windows, Toolbars, and select Advanced Animation. Now what I'm going to do is select the rotate, and I can click and move this exactly where I want the pivot point to be. So now, when I go to all of my other drawings, the pivot point stays in the exact same place. So if I want to move it to the base, again, it stays in the exact same place. So pivot points are going to come in handy, especially when we start working on rigging the body. But in order to change the pivot point, you want to either use your Draw Pivot tool or use the Advanced Animation tools and use your Rotate button.